y'all are sitting close to the back, I'll come to you. My head has been full of all sorts of thoughts in these days and times. And I'm reminded how human history often makes watershed moments with bold statements articulating a significant shift in consciousness, a significant shift in our social organization. Now you'll be relieved to know that I'm not going to talk about the whole of human history. But I'd like to remind you of a few of these moments. One might be when Martin Luther nailed his 95 Theses to the church in Wittenberg in Germany, which launched the Protestant Reformation back in 1517. Another might be in more recent history when the Pilgrims arrived at Plymouth in Massachusetts, and together they formed what was called the Mayflower Compact, which was a plan to have an organization, a community that was self-governing, not ruled over by a monarch. And of course, we just commemorated the Declaration of Independence, another significant declaration in our history, where we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and endowed by the Creator with inalienable rights. And among these, not all of these, but among these, are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So those are just a few. We continue to celebrate these ideals, although at times they seem more aspirational than real. So the gospel lesson for today is a pretty well-known passage. And I've been thinking about what I might share with you this day. I am usually pretty devoted to following the common lectionary of readings that cycle through the year. But today I thought I'd go rogue and pick one that was really something I've been thinking about for a long time. And that is this really a manifesto in just a few words spoken by Jesus when he asked to have the scrolls handed to him. This was after a time of preparation in the desert where he confronted temptations, and maybe over the last decade I've been without a pulpit and in my own desert preparing for this moment today. But he picked up the scrolls and he read this passage from the 60th chapter of the book of the prophet Isaiah. The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he has anointed me to bring good news to the poor, to proclaim release to the captives and recovering of sight to the blind, and to let the prisoners go free, and to proclaim the acceptable year of the Lord. That's an interesting phrase, to proclaim the acceptable year of the Lord. This is a reference to the Jubilee year, which was something that was given to us in the ancient days in the book of Leviticus, that every seventh year would be a sabbatical year. And in that year, all debts would be forgiven. So you wanted in those days to buy your donkey you know, the year before the sabbatical year came up, and then you didn't have to pay any more debt. But 7 times 7 is 49, and they rounded it off to 50. So 50 years was a Jubilee year, and in that year, it was a new beginning. You were supposed to, give up whatever lands you might have acquired through inheritance or purchase or whatever, and redistribute all the wealth among the community. And, my Old Testament professor said, yeah, but they probably never observed it, actually. But it was a nice idea, and it's there in the Bible. The Spirit of the Lord is upon me because He has anointed me to bring good news to the poor, to proclaim release to the captives and recovering of sight to the blind, to set at liberty those who are oppressed, and to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor. A prophetic vision of a future in which the divine glory would be manifest in a reordered society. I think during the first century where Jesus lived under Roman occupation, imperial occupation, it was a society in which there were some very, very wealthy people, and then everybody else was peasants, basically, in Judea, where Jesus lived. And so he was one of them. He came from the peasant class. And to hear him talk in such a way was astounding to the people in the synagogue. Bringing good news to the poor. What kind of good news with the poor here in those days? It makes me think, what kind of good news to the poor here in our days? Seems like some power or principality has been anointed to bring good news to the rich, to hold the stranger captive, to bind the oppressed in their circumstances, and to proclaim the year of the wealthy state. That wasn't the vision of Jesus. Jesus rekindled the ancient vision of the prophet. God's glory was about to be revealed to those who lived by faith and whose eyes were open to see the light of a new day. It's no different today than it was then. Our mission statement in the Upper New York Annual Conference is to make disciples of Jesus Christ for the transformation of the world. To transform the world in which we live. And that's transformed by following Jesus. Not by following a political party or whatever stripe, but by following Jesus. And that's what our task is. To understand who he is, what he wants, and to follow him. It does seem like an impossible task, but, I suspect a few of you would know this tune that was written by Lalo Schiffer. He just died a few weeks ago. Dum, 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 doo-doo, 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 right? Mission impossible. Remember, how the word would come to the protagonist, Ethan Hunt, but before that, Jim Phelps, right? should you choose to accept this mission, right? And so, of course, they always accepted it. You know, I always wanted to see, nah, it's not for me. But they accepted the mission, right? And it was impossible. They had to put on masks and, pretend to be people that they weren't and so on, but they would accomplish that mission, saving the world from tyranny or whatever. And then I've shared with several people already, my favorite cartoon this past year was a cartoon in which Jesus was pictured walking along, with his long hair and robes and so on, and he had a cell phone. I guess he came from the future. And he's looking at it with an amazed look in his face, and it says, "You've got 12 followers." That's 3 times less than we have here today. And yet, you see what happens when you follow Jesus. When you follow him, impossible things are accomplished. And the world can be changed. And so we are called to follow him. To follow in his footsteps. And let him lead us into a new day, a new future. And on the way, we have bread to sustain us, and the cup of salvation, which is our promise, to nourish us and to strengthen us for all that lies ahead. May God bless you this day and bring to your hearts a new conviction to follow in the footsteps